What's up, DIYers? Mike Boards with the Mike Boards channel. Thank you for watching. Hey, we're talking jet skis today, working on my mom and dad's Sea-Doo GTX. And in today's video, the proper and safe way to replace not only your spark plugs, but the wires and boots that feed all the way back to your electrical box. Let's get started. DIYers, here we are at the workstation and mom and dad's jet ski in-house for the winter DIY repair videos. And we've got a lot going on. Let's hop to the other side of the workbench and see what we're dealing with. Making our way around the jet ski, and we even have our very own custom logo or YouTube channel brand, Skateboards. And always a lot going on here. Here's what I recommend. Reference only your exact serial number service manual to alleviate any mistakes during projects. Here is our electrical system schematic, and kind of looks like a lot, but not really. You've got the battery that feeds all the way out to the electrical box. Inside there, your starter relay, your ignition coils, and where your spark plug wires feed into. And on the top, you've got your spark plugs. And that's what we're working on today. Here are our spark plugs. Our OEM replacement numbers are shown there. And here are our wires. It is important to note that one wire is 735 millimeters and the other wire is 635 millimeters, and you will see why here shortly. And we also replaced our starter in previous video, which goes right there. And here the plugs are out of the box, and reference the part number on the plug itself to ensure that you've got the exact replacement plug that matches your part number on your box. Those are nice. On the very bottom, there is the little electrode, and the gap between the top hook here, or the electrode and the connector lead, must be properly gapped. And what I mean by that is there must be the exact space in between the igniter and the lead or terminal set forth by the manufacturers and the engineering that built the engine that these plugs go into. And we're going to show you how to do that, because again, if you don't do that, engine performance will degrade. Taking a step back, we are now on port side of the jet ski, and we are going to carefully remove our seats. And your latches may be in a different spot than mine, but hey, in the event that your latches are making aggressive screeching noises, as you can see, mine are not, we properly lubricated our latches, and that will alleviate premature failure of the latch itself. Scrolling above right now is a link to a video that shows you how to properly lubricate your latch with lithium grease. Again, if your latches are stiff and screeching, well, if you do not lubricate them, they're going to break sooner or later, and that's not what you want. However, if your latch does break, down below in the comment section as well as the description section will be a link on how to replace that. Let's go and remove our seats. And we did just that. Again, both aft and forward seats are removed. The very next step, extremely important, DIYers, cut all electrical power to the jet ski. And in our case, our battery is removed, but in your case, it's probably still installed. And I recommend disconnecting the black negative cable from your battery. Some people actually recommend disconnecting the positive red cable from your battery as well. Making our way port side, I am going to remove the plastic insert here. And now we have better access to the aft or rear portion of the hull. And coming to the front side, this is your seat brace. You do not actually have to remove that. And there are the spark plug wires and boots. We have two plugs, and they feed to the back or aft portion of the hull. As you see here, here are the wires that feed into our electrical box. And inside that electrical box is your starter relay, your ignition coils, and additional connection points for both of your spark plug wires and the red battery cable feeding off of your starter, which in our case, we just replaced. It's down below inside the hull underneath the air box. And that cable that feeds off the starter comes all the way back and goes into that electrical box to the internal starter relay. And let me just open this up just a little bit. As you see inside there, we have one ignition coil on top. There is a second ignition coil on the bottom. They are the exact same part number. And there's all those wires feeding into that box. And for your convenience, down below in the comment section as well as the description section will be links taking you to videos on replacing the ignition coils and the starter relay right there. But I'll put the cap back on, and what we're going to do is come to the front portion of the center brace for the seat. Again, we've got two spark plugs. We're going to carefully pull the boots off of the plugs, and as you pull these off, Do your best not to damage or harm any additional parts. That's like one of my pet peeves during projects. Damaging other parts while you're fixing something else. That's not good. There we go. And it is important to know, in regards to our spark plug wires, they are not the same size or length. And in the event that you are replacing your wires as well, make sure you purchase the proper sizes, because again, they're not the same size in our case. The one that feeds to the forward plug is 735 millimeters, and the wire and boot that feeds to the aft or rear plug is only 635 millimeters. From here, we will grab our ratchet and socket, in our case for our plug, a 5/8 deep socket. I now have the camera positioned down inside the hull, ratchet and socket 5/8 size deep socket, and do your best not to harm any additional parts as you remove your plugs. So position your ratchet properly so as when you turn it to loosen up the plug, you're not hitting any additional parts. And turning it counterclockwise, there we go. That was pretty loose actually. I can remove it by hand. And there is the old plug. It's not in that bad of condition, but there's a little bit of oil on the thread, but the electrode doesn't look too bad. However, new plugs will definitely be better. I'm now coming in from the aft portion of that seat brace, and to remove the second plug, again carefully without damaging anything, counterclockwise, there it goes. And once you loosen it up, you can spend about 10 seconds and unscrew it by hand. Go slow. Do not drop the plug inside the hull. It will sneak underneath the engine, and you may never get it out. Back to the workbench. Brand new plugs on top, and old plugs I just removed. Again, the right plug, check that out. That is extremely gunked up and corroded. And again, the gap doesn't even look like the proper 0.43 gap. Now the plug on the left-hand side, which was our forward plug, it's a lot cleaner than the aft one. And it still kind of looks properly gapped. And the electrode has a little bit more life on it. However, the rear plug, you can see the electrode looks more burned down. And DIYers, that can definitely cause degraded engine performance or power loss when you're out on the water. Alright DIYers, I made my way to our backup workbench because our primary workbench, as you can see, is pretty full of stuff, and I wanted to give you a clear look at what we're doing without any distractions, which include additional parts or paperwork. So again, clean work surface in front of us, and the very first thing I'm going to introduce to you is called a gapper, and you can pick these up at your local hardware store or AutoZone, as you can see. In addition, I will post a link down below in the comments section as well as the description section on where to purchase one of these. And you can see all these little numbers and marks all around the actual gapper. And then this little pre-cut hole is for your keychain. So you can always have it readily accessible on your keys. However, let's take a look at the beginning portion of the tool itself. Notice how it is extremely thin, and that is where you are going to insert the plug. And again, by following your exact serial number service manual, whether you're working on a jet ski, a boat, or a car, or a truck, or a motorcycle, or whatever, you want to make sure you follow that manual to ensure that you're gapping your plugs to proper specs. And as this gapper makes its way to larger numbers on the face, you will notice that this part right here thickens. Check that out. See that? Again, very small and thin at the entry level or position, and as you turn the gapper, the numbers get higher and the thickness of the tool gets higher. Check that out. Pretty neat, huh? What we will do next is grab the spark plug, and I am going to show you how to properly gap your plug. And when referencing our exact serial number service manual for the jet ski, the manual states to gap our plugs at 0.43 inches. And I will give you a close-up view of that. And you can see this is the inches side and 0.43. So I'm going to insert the plug at the very beginning and thin portion of the tool, and I'm going to carefully shift the plug up until I reach 4.3. So there's the 0.40, which is the large line right there. And then you've got 1, 2, 3. So that is where I will end the gap and then immediately pull the plug off of the tool. Now to the plug. Again, as we saw on the primary workbench, you've got the electrode and the terminal. And when the engine is running, there is a constant spark or electrical connection between this electrode right here and the looped or hooked terminal. And you can see that gap. So without further ado, again, I've got the gapper tool, I've got the plug. I'm going to position it just like that, and I'm going to carefully shift the plug, and right about there is where I get some tension and resistance, which is good because the gap is not overly open, because at that point, if it was, I would have to ever so carefully bend that terminal back down toward the electrode. And you will need to use a little bit of friendly pressure and go very slow as you work this up the tool, because the last thing you want to do is overshoot it. And I'm carefully moving it. Again, it's got tension, and I'm at 0.039-ish, just shy of 0.04. Again, I've got to take it all the way to the 0.43 for our specific serial number. And again, just some friendly pressure, and work it to 0.43. I'm going to position the center of the terminal exactly at the 0.043 mark. And just a little bit more, and I think I'm right on. Check that out. 0.43 as shown here. And from here, a little bit of tension to pull the plug off as such. And now that gap is exactly set to the manufacturer's specifications. Again, in between the terminal and the electrode. And onto the second plug. Again, I will start at the very entry thin portion and slowly make my way up to the 0.43. And I think I'm spot on right there. Check that out. Again, tension when you pull the plug off the gapper, and that completes the proper steps for gapping your spark plugs. Here we are back to the primary workbench, and again, the spark plugs are properly gapped and ready to be installed inside the jet ski. And a quick reposition of the camera, I grabbed some dielectric grease, and we are going to apply the grease right there. And not on this portion, because that is what assists in the electrical current and connection. We are going to apply it to the very top porcelain white section here. And as the boot is reinstalled onto the plug, this whole section inside the boot that wraps around the plug will not get stuck in place over time, making it extremely difficult to pull the boot off for later spark plug and wire maintenance and replacement. And I am doing just a tiny bit. Do not overdo this, DIYers. I must say, in the event that you apply too much dielectric grease on your spark plugs, well, that can actually work to your disadvantage because it can interfere with the electrical connection. Again, I am applying it just to the top portion of the white section, feeding off the electrical lead of the plug. Not a lot, that's it. I'll do the same for the second plug. Again, just a little bit, as shown here. Alright, DIYers, back inside the jet ski hull, and here is the forward spark plug chamber, and there is the rear one behind this portion here. And what I'm going to do next is carefully clean the insert or thread of the spark plug chambers. And I want to do my best to get as much of this gunk out of that area without dropping it inside the engine. You don't want any debris falling inside your engine. So again, clean it up and carefully pull the paper towel out in a way where it comes out on the towel rather than falling in the engine. And I'll do the same for the rear spark plug chamber and thread. After you clean those, carefully lower your plug down inside the chamber, and without cross threading the plug into the lower thread of the block, carefully and slowly, with precision, turn the plug clockwise until the thread catches. Again, do not cross thread this inside your engine block. That would not be good. It should go in extremely easily. And if it doesn't, go ahead and stop and counterclockwise turn it and pull the plug out, reset the thread, and do it again. Again, as you can see, it is going in extremely easy. In addition, as I screw this plug in, I'm not going to touch the top portion of the plug because that is where I applied that dielectric grease. And I will hand tighten this all the way down. And once you can no longer tighten it by hand, go ahead and revert back to your ratchet and socket. And another extremely important step, do not over tighten your plug inside the engine. You want it snug, but again, do not over tighten it. We will now insert the aft or rear plug. Again, do not drop your plug and do not cross thread your plug inside the engine. Look how easily that plug is hand turning. Back to the ratchet and socket. Coming back inside, I do want to show you, we have a vacuum line actually tie strapped to both of our wires, and that feeds up to our little check valve here. And we will post a link down below on how to replace that, as well as your little solenoid here. In the event that you have degraded engine power or power loss, and you can no longer accelerate to normal RPM, well, you might need to replace this. However, again, when it comes time to re-secure the wires with the tie strap, I will also tie in this vacuum line that feeds all the way down, right down here. See that? At this point, zip ties are removed and I added just a little bit of light inside here. Let's direct our attention to the electrical box. And this is where it kind of gets a little annoying, but that's okay. Us DIYers are used to this kind of stuff, right? And with that said, what I'm going to do, our larger wire feeds to the far left connection fitting here, and our shorter wire is that blue cable feeding into that fitting there. I am going to counterclockwise turn each of these little securing plastic caps that feed onto the plastic thread of the box. And shift that back. Hopefully yours is not tough. And at this point you can see the internal rubber seals that alleviate water from sneaking into those little openings there and making its way inside the electrical box and ultimately corroding and destroying every single thing inside that box. That is not what you want. And I will also pull this little rubber fitting out just a little bit so I know it's loose from here. I'm going to remove this cap. I want to show you a better view. And it kind of looks like our cap seal has come off. I'm going to pull that up and shift it to the side here. I will re-secure that at the tail end of the project. And there is the internal portion of our electrical box. Again, you've got your ignition coils, one on top and one on bottom. And you can follow the shorter or 635 millimeter cable or wire. And it secures to this fitting right here. I'm going to disconnect that, and it is just the lead. And actually what we have to do in order to pull this wire out of the electrical box, we have to carefully remove this large rubber boot fitting that secures onto the ignition coil. And you may be able to just carefully pull it off by hand. However, do not break anything as you do that. And a quick reposition of the camera. Again, I'm trying to give you a good view of this. You can actually stick your thumb inside here and without hurting yourself, carefully push that electrical lead out as you simultaneously pull the wire to, again, remove this boot from the wire so you can pull it out of the box. There we go. There it is. Do not drop this either. Notice the white tape basically on it. When it comes time to re-secure this fitting to the new wire, you will notice the white tape matches the white tape on the top ignition coil. And from here you can just see, without that rubber boot, you can now pull it all the way out of the electrical box. However, before I do that, I'm actually going to go down below and remove the lower boot and fitting from the lower ignition coil. And again, that one is the far left fitting, which feeds all the way up to our forward plug. And they come off of the ignition coils pretty easily. As shown here, again, I will push down on the inner lead here and remove this boot from the wire. Making progress. As you can see, both rubber boots are removed that secure the wires to the ignition coils. And again, the boot with the white tape secures to the smaller 635 millimeter wire that feeds to the aft or rear plug. and goes into the top ignition coil that has white tape on it in our case. Yours may be labeled differently. And from here, I am just going to carefully pull each of the wires out of their respective holes of the plastic electrical box. From here, I can ever so carefully, without damaging anything, I might just come to the front end and pull the spark plug wires and boots out. If it gets caught on something, don't tug it. Don't break anything in the process. There they are. Let's head back to the workbench. As you can see, the old spark plug wires are on the workbench. We will get to that here shortly. I want to give you a close-up view of the internal portion of our electrical box. Again, you've got an ignition coil with white tape on top. You've got the second or lower ignition coil down below. And in the bottom right corner, where the two red wires feed onto the top electrical studs there, is your starter relay. And overall, it doesn't look too bad in there. There is some discoloration at the bottom portion of the electrical box, which really is an indication that moisture at some point got inside here, or that's just a combination of a bunch of dust and debris that was gathered inside there from those corroded bolts that secure the ignition coils in place. Look at those. Those will be fun to remove. And in addition, in the event that you want step-by-step guidance on how to properly and safely replace both your top and lower ignition coils, definitely check out the link down below in the comment section as well as the description section. So again, I wanted to give you a close-up view of that. Let's head back to the workbench. To the workbench, and again, old spark plug wires. And you actually do not need to keep the rubber fittings here, nor these little caps, because, well, in our case, our brand new spark plug wires come with that little rubber fitting and the securing cap. What we'll do is remove the brand new spark plug wires from the packaging and get them ready for dielectric grease and to be installed back in the jet ski. And before I remove them from the packaging, I do want to show you the part numbers and information here. As you see, got the customer name there, that's me. So the 635 millimeters, this is the shorter wire. And this one should say 735, and it does. That will be the longer wire that connects to the forward plug. Let's go and remove them. And here they are, brand new spark plugs out of the packaging. One thing I want to point out, the two little gray rubber fittings are about maybe 2 inches tops from the lead tips. A lot different from the old or original spark plug wires. You can see there's a large gap, and I actually measured it with a tape measure. It is 5 1/8 inches on both wires. So it's easier to do this step now as opposed to doing this while you're inside the hull. Go ahead and carefully shift these rubber boots all the way back to match the exact same distance or measurement of your old plugs. Another quick reposition of the camera, I went ahead and grabbed my Gear Lube SA90 and just the tiniest little bit, just a little bit off the cap that has some lube on it. I lubricated my fingers, and from there I grabbed the new wire and bushing or fitting here and just carefully lubricated the wire, and that allowed me to very conveniently and easily move or shift this rubber bushing to, again, 5 1/8 inch. So I'm going to put it down right at my tape measure and maybe back just a little bit more, and there it is, 5 1/8 inches. I will do the exact same for the second or smaller cable or wire. A little too much, I'll push the bushing back forward and a little bit more. A little too much, pull it back just a little bit. And there it is, 5 1/8 inch. So again, very important. From here, I'm going to carefully dab just a little bit of dielectric grease inside this portion. Do not overdo this, DIYers. Adding too much dielectric grease can actually work to your disadvantage because it will interfere with the proper electrical connection. And again, as you can see, just a tiny bit. And I will coat just the outer surface just a little bit and some inside. Do not overdo this. I'll do the same for the second wire. Back inside the jet ski to the rear portion of the hull where our electrical box is, and I am carefully feeding the larger of the two spark plug wires in place, and I'm going to insert it inside the far left hole. And if your boot gets caught up on the opposite end, go ahead and loosen it up. And again, there it is through the electrical box. From here, I need to install the proper rubber boot onto the internal lead there. And again, the white tape will go on the other spark plug wire. And from here, I will pull this up as shown here, and I will install it as shown here. Might be a little tricky at the start, but because we have dielectric grease on this, it makes it a lot easier. As you see right there. And you can basically bring it in to a point where it is sticking out just a little bit as shown here. We will then go down below and install it inside the lower connection point of that lower ignition coil. And I will just feed that in, and I'll do my best not to get in your way, but it's really going to be impossible. I will shift this rubber fitting back onto the lower portion of the ignition coil and really secure it in there. And once I have confirmed that the electrical connection is fully seated inside the coil, I will then push that boot further in and flush with the face of the coil. And as you see right here, I will now go to the opposite end and I will feed the cap down, and I will properly align the plastic thread without cross threading it, secure this in tight as shown there. Double check that the opposite end is still fully seated and secured in the lower ignition coil. And from here we can go grab the smaller spark plug wire. And slowly but surely, without damaging anything, I am feeding that smaller wire in, and it's caught up on the back. I'll go ahead and slightly release it. It will make it easier to push this in place. And from here, again, the rubber boot or fitting with the white tape is to be secured to the smaller wire. And that dielectric grease again helps in getting this boot onto the wire. And there it is, check that out. I'll push that aside. This wire right here will actually tie into the bottom portion of our electrical box cap, and that will come on top of the fitting. So I'll shift that over and I will secure this fitting. There we go. From here, bring that little cap down and you will align the cap on the thread without cross threading it, secure it tight. Do not over tighten these, but you do want them snug, because the whole purpose of those rubber bushings or fittings or seals is to create a watertight seal at this very location to alleviate any water sneaking inside those holes and making their way inside that electrical box. From here, double check everything. And I also resecured the rubber seal for the top cap. That will feed into the bottom portion here. I'm going to reposition the cap in place, and you've got little hooks or tension tabs that feed into their respective slots on either side of the box. Here we are in the front portion of the hull, and it is time to secure the rubber boots to the plugs. And we have already applied dielectric grease to the plugs, and you can carefully align your rubber boot. And as you push it down, do it slowly so you can properly line up your plug inside the electrical lead on the top portion of the boot. And once you are aligned, you can carefully apply some additional friendly downward pressure until it properly seats onto the plug. And you heard that unique clicking sound? That is properly secured now to the front plug and boot. Again, nice and slow, properly seat it. I'll come to the front and apply that downward pressure. Now to a close-up. And let's transition to the aft portion of the hull. And oddly enough, our old wires were not properly secured in the respective slots on the engine. So we will do that now for our brand new ones. And again, this little vacuum line right here, we are going to zip tie to the brand new wires. And I did just that. You can see the zip ties, one on top and one on the bottom. Only two. What I'll do now is snip the excess portion of the zip tie. Do not over tighten these zip ties. The only purpose of them is to keep your wires organized and not sloppily positioned inside your hull where they can make contact with parts they're not supposed to. At this point, zip ties are properly snipped. Again, do not over tighten these. You can see that I can move the vacuum line freely. It is not pinched. And down below, that is not over tightened either. From here, double check everything, DIYers, to ensure that you're not leaving any tools behind, nor are you leaving anything disconnected or not properly secured to their respective fittings. Come back to the top to your battery and reconnect the battery to restore electrical power to your jet ski. And from here, what we'll do is carefully shift the little plastic storage insert back in place and re-secure the seats. Taking a step back, seats are re-secured. Let's go to the workbench. I want to show you our brand new ignition coils that we're going to install in our very next DIY repair video. Back to the workbench, and here are our brand new ignition coils, and per our serial number service manual, those are the exact OEM replacement part numbers. Let's open them up. And there it is. Again, we've got two of them, one on top and bottom, as you've seen during our project. I only pulled one out because, again, they're the exact same. And scrolling above right now is a link to a video where we replace both of our ignition coils. Really enhance the ignition system and electrical system moving forward. Here we are back port side of the jet ski. Before we wrap this video up, I do want to talk about additional parts that you may want to replace, and we are going to make step-by-step videos. Check this out. This is the actual little step that you put your foot on while you're in the water, and you come up here, pull yourself up onto the jet ski. Well, this little pad here looks like it's the original. It's all dry rotted, ripped, and begging for a replacement. Check that out. Here is our brand new pad, OEM. And we are going to post a video link down below in the comment section as well as the description section for that. In addition, coming to the very front portion of the jet ski where your handlebars are, we also replaced the start-stop push-button cap and the push-button inside behind this cap that connects to the wire harness that feeds all the way through your handlebar unit and downstream. That will be down below as well. In addition, this little spring-loaded latch right here, DIYers, that breaks over time, unfortunately, and we've got you covered. A video link will be down below as well. From here, we hope this helps. As always, we are all about do-it-yourself here, DIY. Do us a favor, below the video, you will see that thumbs up icon. Click on that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Definitely ring your YouTube bell. That would be very helpful to us. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching.